Next, I'd like to introduce you to Gregg Winn. Gregg was a client of Archford Consulting, and he has some wonderful stories, and he's actually exited an organization. So we're going to bring him up and just kind of start with a couple of questions to ask him. Partner, my first question for you. Oh, you got it? Oh, you're going to say it.
They took away my slides, which is actually a very, very good thing, but it's an extremely bright and talented panel here today. What I can provide is a little bit of kind of first-person perspective, because I sat in that chair, and I still do sit in that chair, and I've been to these conferences before, and I've taken copious notes, and I've come home motivated, and then it sits on my desk when the daily and the weekly and the monthly of running a business, and everything gets pushed aside. But just a little bit of history, and it's very, very brief. I mean, I never looked or thought I would be an entrepreneur. I had a great corporate career, and so my situation, my case study, is really everything within running a privately held business. Kind of a petri dish, if you will, of opportunities and challenge. I started my first organization in 2008, and everybody remembers what an absolutely wonderful time that was to start or to manage a company. But it was a typical startup, typical challenges, capital, manufacturing, marketing, customers, embezzlement. That was one of them. That was the first curveball that was thrown at me, and it wasn't a little. It was a big one. And it kind of takes me to that old quote that's attributed to Mike Tyson. You know, everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth. But we managed through that. We had some growth. We went through a divorce. I did. And so my personal net worth went from up here to the red ink down at the bottom in order to maintain control and ownership of the company that I founded. We opened up a facility on the West Coast outside of Phoenix, a manufacturing facility, so all the challenges and logistics that go with running an organization that's a couple thousand miles away. And then we had exponential growth and culminated with an acquisition in 2020. So in my business life cycle, it was years before I started to plan for a transition. And thankfully, it didn't bite me too much on the backside of things. But I was fortunate to know Jim in his pre-Archford days, and he helped me, and they helped me when I was this nebulous little company that wasn't making any money. But I was never ever afraid to ask for help, and their goals were aligned with my goals, and my interests were aligned with their interests. And I always thought it would be great to have the option to retire in my 50s without having any sort of concrete plan in terms of how I was going to do that. So there's really this critical mass, if you will, of factors, both business and personal, that finally got me off my ass and started to think strategically in terms of what the planning and what the exit's going to be. I sold my company in February of 2020, literally 5 days before COVID started to destroy life as we know it and the financial markets at the same time. So people mention to me, they're like, you're the smartest son of a gun that I've ever met. And I'm like, I'm the luckiest son of a gun, because nobody could have ever planned or figured out what COVID would do. But you have to think these things through. You have to commit to a plan. You have to communicate the details of how and who and when. Transition planning and succession planning is as important as any other strategic planning that you're going to be doing. I recently started another business. Retirement, that got boring very, very quickly. And in 2008, when I started Number One, it was 1,000 miles an hour in 1,000 different directions. I was motivated because failure was absolutely not an option. And the second go-round, a company that we founded and opened up this year, I was much calmer. And I had to kind of question myself, this doesn't feel the same as the first go-round. Do I lack the fire? Do I lack the motivation? What's going on here? And I came to realize that it was confidence. I mean, I've done this before. I've been through this before, but believe you me, I certainly have locked down from the get-go the transition plan. It's in place, it's communicated, and it's ready to go. So in summary, there was a comment that was made, and I stole this from somebody else in the walkthrough yesterday, which is very appropriate. Start early and don't wait. It literally is that simple, whoever made that comment in the call yesterday. And I personally have been blessed with the resources of Jim and Mark and Jacob and a lot of very, very smart people that have been able to help me the same way that they can help your organization. So with that, you want to open it up to...
Greg, I'd throw out a question to you on, as you were laying out the groundwork for Fabco in this second go around, what were some of the initial thoughts, and what was the difference in the timing in putting it together versus Wire Basket Tray, your first company? Guys, folks, I got to tell you too, this guy's being extremely modest. That little startup company in 2008 ended up doing business with Amazon, Facebook, and everything like that, and created miles and miles of Wire Basket Tray for those companies. He took a product that had been around for years and created patents around it so that there wouldn't be stress points on the wires. It was brilliant work, so kudos.
I don't mean to cut you off, go ahead. The fab coat, what we do now is we fabricate and a lot of that goes to the cable tray industry. A lot of that goes to my old company. But the point that I made as I was wrapping up there, in terms of not feeling that same passion and fire, it was just a comfort factor. It really was in terms of knowing that I've done this before, and I know what I'm doing in this case. We saw a need in the marketplace for powder coating, as sexy as that is, in this area, in this territory. And it's the same thing we did. Jim mentioned about the success I had in cable tray, which is not exactly the most fascinating product, but we did okay with it. And we took that same analogy and the same benefits on the cable tray, and we turned that into powder coating. And as unsexy as cable tray is, and as unsexy as powder coating can be, we created differentiation. We created features and benefits that were saleable and tangent to our downstream customers. And so it's the same business model that we had on the cable tray side of the business. It's just transitioned to a whole new thing. And people that know me know of the culture that we had at WBT, which was extremely unique and extremely rare. I ran the company for 12 years. We had a manufacturing plant in Southern Illinois. We had a manufacturing plant in Phoenix. In those 12 years, manufacturing, engineering, sales, we lost one employee in 12 years of running the organization. And that one employee that left, sorry to get sidetracked here, was a young kid that went out to the Rocky Mountains for Thanksgiving and fell in love. And I said, look, you're never going to have this opportunity again. Go ahead and chase it. And if it doesn't work out, come back here. But that just speaks to the same environment where we're trying to do at Fabcoat, and that is valuing the employees, making them part of the team, and bringing everybody on board.
Greg, I know, speaking of speed on things, do transactions sometimes have to happen quickly?
Absolutely. In our case, when we had a suitor that stepped up on the company, it was transitioned at that point in time really to Mark and to you. But we had a definitive deadline of the 10th of February because there was a major industry conference that was happening. And I'm not going to show up and blow smoke up everybody and talk about strategic things when I know behind the surface that this is really going on. So it was an absolutely hard deadline. The acquirer said they didn't know if they could make it, and but to the point that was brought up earlier, our financials were clean, our financials were updated, we were all wrapped up in a nice pretty bow and ready to go. And the last week or so, Mark took it over the goal line. So it happened on an expedited time frame that was measured in, I think, about 60 to 90 days.
Yes, Liz.
And Greg, you've been through that once. Any comments or suggestions on what business owners can do in the future?
It's going to be interesting to see what happens next year. Obviously, there's a lot of forecasting. From a business owner standpoint, we always, I only speak to myself, we always ran a very conservative ship. We always retained lots of cash within the organization to weather. We always kept the accounts flush. We always accrued for expenses. I won't say a hunker down mentality, but I was always kind of brought up in business and raised that way, that we wanted to have resources to weather any storm, whether it's something on a personal note or something more on a macro note. What we did.